Welcome back, Venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am Emar, and together with Taurus, it's time we tackle those who reside in shadows. Elusive characters who remain just out of view, but whose presence can sometimes be felt throughout the story. I'm talking about all manner of off-screen characters. Taurus, let's bring them out into the light.
Yes, this is a bit of an interesting aspect you sometimes see in visual novels, and other stories to be honest, but visual novels give the medium some room to play with in hiding people's identities. Now, if you ask me, I feel there are 3 different approaches a visual novel may be taking in hiding a character's appearance. The first one, and the funniest in my opinion, is just that there are some minor characters that never got sprites. The side characters or the background individuals who the developers prioritized other characters more than them, and they figured, okay, these guys are barely in the story, they don't get much attention at all, I'm just not going to create any sprites for them. And I think there's a pretty obvious example with Nekopara, right, MR?
Yeah, that's true. We have a ton of client A characters there who never ever got a sprite. They didn't have enough impact on the story itself. And hilariously enough, someone who never got voice lines would be protagonist's parents, who were very instrumental in what led for protagonist to move out from the house and run his own business. And they never existed. They were mentioned plenty of times. But maybe that changes later. But yeah, it is always humorous when we have a side off-screen character that is literally villager A, right?
Mm-hmm. They are completely off-screen, not because of any narrative functionality. It's straight up because this person is a bit player who only shows up for this one scene, and they are not worth any amount of effort from the developers.
Although some of them do have voice lines. I've definitely seen VNs that have a villager A that literally say a line and nothing more.
Yeah, that's the interesting part, is that visual novels, they have a few different avenues to express the characters, whether it's through sprite, or through voice acting, or through the writing itself. So that's funny, is that sometimes you have characters that exist in some forms but not the others. Like you said, like with Villager A, they don't even earn a name, or they just get shown on screen with like a silhouette, a generic silhouette of stock image of random man. But they'll still might get that. Yeah, maybe if that. But they'll still get voice acting. Maybe it's just because they had one voice actor who's giving standard stock lines for like one voice actor who's handling like 8 different roles. Because all of them are just like 2 lines each, and you'll never see them again in the story.
Yeah, fair.
But as for something like, the parents in Nekopara, how it's, they are a factor of the story, they are characters, it's just that they're not important enough to get any real impact from the dev team.
Yeah, that's exactly as you say. They are important as in they drive. They drive the story forward. They are the excuse and the reason. The main character Kasho left home, but they never got any sprite work or any voice acting up until Volume 4. And I feel like this might tie into some of the other types of off-screen characters that you prepared, because this is an interesting case of someone who got promoted from an off-screen side character that was barely mentioned into, now I'm central drama of proving yourself. Now the protagonist arc is to his own father, what he accomplished during this absence.
Interesting. I kind of have something similar with the sci-fi title I.O. from Regista, It's a very serious sci-fi plot-focused story. Unfortunately, the budget didn't go too far, and there are several characters along the way that you meet that are introduced late into the story, halfway through the story, as the plot develops, who just don't have sprites. But they are named characters.
Okay.
They have plenty of, lines of dialogue. There's a whole lot of stuff that happens with them, but they just never have a sprite. It's just an empty screen. Compared to the main characters who have their own poses and expressions and all of that. So it gets kind of funny later on if you have like two unsprited characters having this emotional conversation, but there are no visuals. It's kind of takes you out of the moment, huh?
Yeah, welcome to the Battle of Mid.
Oh, it's like these guys, they're trying to overcome their well, what is it there? I guess you could say lack of care, lack of attention from the developers. They're trying to express themselves. Oh,
Lack
dear.
of importance, yeah.
Yep. Anyways, I think that's definitely the most plentiful example you could find of off-screen characters. Just tiny bit roles that don't really matter. But if we start to get into the meat of what you would expect out of off-screen characters, I think there's another aspect of plot-important characters who are intentionally kept hidden. Either to just feed a mysterious atmosphere, or I guess you could say just to add to their aura of the idea of like someone behind the scenes, or just someone too big for you to even comprehend yet. Someone completely different on your level. Yeah, Amor?
Yeah, I have exactly example that you are talking about. In World End Economica, you pretty early on, okay, maybe this is a story about economics, and there's a lot of drama and or conflict revolve around money, and you observing stocks go up or stocks go down. And pretty early on, you meet a business partner of sorts that turns really fast into your rival. And while you met him, you exchanged some dialogue. After that fact, he completely disappears, and for the rest of the series, the only contact you have with that person is via email. Whenever your stocks go up or down, you get an accompanying message from him. He's completely out of your reach.
Mm-hmm. But he's still pretty much your rival, someone who's regularly in the story, someone you regularly oppose.
Yes, exactly. You don't see him, but you feel his influence and his movement of money or choices and or what he's doing. It definitely influences you from the lenses of protagonists, but you don't see his face, you can't talk to him, he's just out of your reach.
So
the game itself makes that as a point. He's an off-screen character, but he's so impactful, you feel every move he makes.
Interesting. In my case, it's not quite as extreme as that, but I have to go back to old Reliable with a classic. It's a little something called Nope Nope Nurses. Yes, because although our poor protagonist is stuck in a terrible hospital filled with rotten personality nurses, as much as he's enduring their abuse, he does hear about the dreaded head nurse. The nurse highest on the hierarchy chain. Someone who's more terrible than any of the others. But for the first in this trilogy, we don't see hide nor hair of this head nurse. And it's not until the story starts developing, it's not until we see, little sneak peeks of who this head nurse is, until we get later into the story when the stakes start rising, and she emerges as a standout character in this visual novel trilogy. But this is a way keeping the visuals out of sight, keeping their influence unknown, just builds up to the atmosphere that we see at the beginning. Because at first, we got to lower the stakes. We got to set expectations of what to expect out of this story. And as time goes on, as you want to build up the escalation, make things, every difficulty needs to be more imposing than the last. That way, the story can build up a character into feeling like the final boss that the head nurse is. And so, yeah, that idea of keeping this character off screen just adds to the intrigue, and it really builds her up as a final boss kind of character.
Yeah, although I am surprised you haven't used another favorite example of yours, which is Criminal Border, the syndicate boss.
Yeah, that's another interesting part. Criminal Border.
I just remember that character when you were describing the headmistress from the hospital.
Yeah, Criminal Border, I think that one's a lot easier because you're dealing with a criminal underworld. That's the whole premise, is that, you have this normal high school kid who is now stepping into this dangerous den of thieves. And of course, you're not going to find all the info out right away, especially when you're a small fry. You got to build things up. You got to take things one challenge at a time. And as you start building up the reputation, as you start making a name for yourself, only then you start seeing the bigger picture. You start to get familiar with the bigger players. Heck, it should be an honor for you, the reader, to even see some of these bigwigs. Yeah, it's not until you're at a suitable level to even gaze upon their appearance. That's what it means to keep them off screen.
Honestly, how they built up Luca was one of those few things I can't really say bad about Criminal Border. They definitely did that character justice by first only giving you a glimpse, because if you remember, in Volume 1 only knew that person exists. Mm-hmm. Then you got a name and a voice. And then, when you were deep in trouble and you earned your reputation, then you had an audience.
Ooh, okay. Feel the aura.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do want to give a shout out to another one that I thought of, was Witch on the Holy Night. This one isn't so big of a deal, but it's one of the examples in which Witch of the Holy Night has incredible production values. And sometimes it feels like they're just flexing how skilled their artists and art directors are. But in this case, I guess you could say the prologue, the first chapter of Witch of the Holy Night, is from Aozaki's perspective. And as from her point of view, we don't ever see her face. She has sprites, and there are CGs of her, but it's always, either from behind or with her head out of view. Meanwhile, we have our other main character, Shizuki, who is going through his own introduction to the school, separate from Aozaki, and he is also kept out of view. We never see his face. He's always either, out of frame, or we see him from behind or whatnot. And as these two main characters get closer and closer to intersecting paths, we still are kept out of sight, until that final meeting point when the two of them, I guess, lock eyes for the first time, and then we, the reader, finally get to see them, these two characters' appearances. I think that's a great stylistic touch, where these characters, their faces are kept hidden, and so in a sense you could say that they are kept off screen for the first, 15-20 minutes of this VN, until you get that dramatic meeting. So I think it's a very stylish way to keep, for off-screen characters, for that reveal.
There is so many examples of exactly what you're describing, but I struggle to find one that wouldn't be a spoiler.
Oh no.
Because think about that. part of the reason it's obfuscated sometimes is made for a dramatic reveal of "it was you all along" kind of deal.
Ooh, yeah.
So yeah, it is quite a common use of those characters that manipulate from the shadows, and they are the bosses of the bosses, right? That are later on the line revealed for some sort of dramatic payoff.
Yeah.
And did you connect the dots? Did you even think about who's behind all of that?
In fact, that's what I want to get at with the third point. I think that's the third aspect of how visual novels treat off-screen characters, is that they're keeping the identity a secret as a mystery twist. I mean, yeah, it's exactly like what you're saying. Like, here's a murder mystery, and obviously we don't know who the killer is. That's the whole point of this story, is that we're trying to find the killer. And so this mysterious killer is practically an off-screen character. Although who knows, maybe it's someone we know, maybe it's someone who's been hinted at earlier, maybe it is a total unknown of a killer that we need to locate. But still, the idea is they are intended to be off-screen until we can drag them into the spotlight. Now, obviously, like you said, MR, this kind of involves spoilers. It's not the sort of thing that we can make easy examples of.
And honestly, VNs, at least I don't remember the last time VNs used code names to refer to those mystery characters. Like, I don't know if you know the series Mentalist. It was a TV series that had an overarching villain called Red John. That was his code name. And that mystique about who's Red John was kept throughout many seasons.
Nice, perfect. Yeah, or especially something, a visual novel like Cartogra. It's a very standard, murder mystery. It's like you are the main character as a detective trying to figure out who is killing all of these innocent girls in this village out in the countryside. And what's really interesting is that there are a few times in this VN where we change perspectives into the killer's head. And so we can see through their perspective as the killer is, kidnapping or killing, or the monologues of why they're doing what they're doing. But because it's through their eyes, we can't determine their identity. There are no mirrors around where we could catch a glimpse of their own face. There's no identifying info that goes on in their monologues and stuff. But still, the idea remains is that even though we've shifted perspective into this mystery killer, it's just out of reach that we can't determine any info on who this person is. We're no closer to solving our investigation. And so I think that just highlights the mystery aspect even more. This character's off screen, but now here they're so close yet so far.
Just one solid clue away.
Exactly. That's how all good murder mysteries should be. It's even throughout, right up until the end, the culprit is still so far off screen. But that's the glorious part, when you can finally put all the clues together and suddenly, boom, you've got them in your sights.
Yep, that's true. That is character status of an off-screen used as a twist. When it finally goes revealed.
Now, another mystery in this vein is 428 Shibuya Scramble. It starts off as a simple kidnapping and ransom scenario, but as the day progresses, for all sorts of people in Shibuya, this morphs into a much deeper situation than anyone could have guessed. And pretty soon, it becomes clear to people that Alphard is behind this. Alphard, the criminal mastermind who's pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes. However, even though they're a famous criminal, nobody knows anything about this mysterious Alphard. They don't know anything. Absolutely nothing. Zilch. And all we can see, as the events of 428 unfold, is just the results of their plans and their confusion they're sowing among the protagonists. And so, yes, we've got this whole aspect of an off-screen character, someone we can never even visualize, and yet they're the central focus of everything going on in 428. Also in 428, there's a character named Tama. They're stuck in an oversized mascot suit, that cat that you might see scrolling along in this gallery. They've got amnesia, and their suit is also stuck, so we can't see anything about their appearance. So,
oh my! Do you really want to say that kind of character is off screen because it's not overtly shown who that is?
I mean, in a sense, yeah. Like, off-screen characters, it doesn't literally mean this character is beyond the 4 lines of the rectangle of our screen. This cat is right there, front and center in the camera, and yet we know nothing about them.
So you're telling this is like a Schrodinger's character?
Schrodinger's cat. We can't ever avoid that cat. Is the cat real or dead? I don't know until we observe it.
Exactly. Who knows who that is until you observe?
Exactly.
You have to open that suit.
It could be anyone. So, I mean, I know that there's the literal idea of a character being off-screen. But in terms of visual novels, I mean, we already described we have characters who just never bothered to get any voice acting or sprites or visuals, but they still exist. They're still right there in the scene, acting, part of it.
I want to also test the definition of off-screen character. Does it have to be a character that doesn't have a sprite, or is just lack of presence enough? Or is even that is not necessarily the best word to describe. What I mean by that is that I have an example of a sequel. Okay, Venus Blood Ragnarok is a sequel to Venus Blood Frontier, which happens plenty time after the original. Importantly, many original characters and heroines aren't present here. But throughout the entire story, one name is being brought time and time and time again. The most important heroine from the perspective of the world, Odin. She is constantly ever present in the sequel, brought up. Her name, her actions, her laws, everything is through her, how can I say it? From her, not necessarily present, but rather from her perspective judged in the present. Like, would Odin approve? Would Odin be okay with that? Etc. etc.
It's like a guiding light of morality.
Exactly. Right? A baseline of sorts of what has been in the past, what should be for the next generation. Would she approve? Kind of deal. But she doesn't appear in this game. She's ever present all the time. And honestly, for the majority of the time, it leaves you hanging. Will she appear? Question mark? No. She's not here. Which makes sense. It's consistent with what we assumed. Everybody from the original is long past away. Yet this one is ever present. And you feel her presence insofar those events transpire, even though she's ultimately off-screen character, brought up in conversation constantly.
Yep, I think that's also adds a lot to the world building too. When you have a character who's not related to current events, and yet that memory of them still carries so far in everyone else's consciousness. Again, it's the same as being off-screen, and this is a character who never shows up after all. However, in a sense, they're still showing up regularly. And that's why I think the whole idea of off-screen characters, it seems so simple at first. It's just, hey, here's a character who's around but just never shown. And I think that's the most
Yeah.
direct, the simplistic, straightforward way to look at it. But there's still so many other cases, so many other stories in visual novels that make you wonder just... There's a whole spectrum of how involved a character is under the spotlight.
Yeah, it can be more literal off-screen character. It can be less literal, more ethereal idea of being off-screen. If you remember, I remember you haven't completed, but you played Black Souls. But I'm not sure if you've seen the completion wiki or something. Part of the reason why you're so lost and trying to figure out where you are, what is happening, where to go, is finding who's behind all of that, who's the creator of this garden. And if you follow that story to its conclusion, you reach, I believe it was ending H or something like that, or G, then game itself literally would ask you, okay, you met all the characters, who is it? And gives you the screen to type the name.
Yep,
who is it?
That's always gold. Just like how I was
what-
talking
what-
about last week with Banshee's Last Cry. At one,
Yeah.
There's a point in there. Well, they'll ask you, all right, who do you think is the murderer? And they'll give you the text box, and you have to type in the name. And there's a large cast, just like how there's a large cast in Black Souls. So, you've got way too many options to just blindly guess, like as in a multiple choice.
Yeah, we keep bringing that silly VN as well. Let me pile in the murder of the Sonic the Hedgehog. The same deal. You had killer on the loose all the time. Now is the final confrontation. Who was it? You've met all the characters. Name it.
Exactly, the dramatic climax of any good murder mystery is finally pointing the finger. It was you. Now, with all that said, Amar, I have to ask, do you like the idea of off-screen characters?
It depends, honestly. I'm trying to piece it all together, what makes it for a compelling off-screen character and what not. For example, the most recent read of mine that I'm still on is Love's Sweet Garnish. Okay, it's a title similar in structure to Necopara, as in you have a normal high school boy who, for whatever reason, becomes manager of his own restaurant. Okay, this time it's more of a he starts as a helper to a restaurant that is managed and or owned by his grandma, and she's just poor of health right now. So he arrives at the place, takes over, and then she's constantly mentioned in the dialogue, but you never see her. And finally, okay, it's time for the visiting days. You go to visit the hospital to tell the grandma good news that you took over everything. Don't worry, grandma, everything will be deja vu. And the screen goes to black, then the screen goes back, and the first thing I see, that was a nice visit. She's happy. I'm like, what the fuck happened? Where's the grandma? I've read so many times about her, and now we skip that? What the hell?
Skip. We're just gonna ignore that scene.
Another funny, silly example of, I suppose that constitutes off-screen characters. You'll be the judge. I mentioned that before.
Yep.
Oh my god! I spaced. No. Yep. I had an example. I just spaced on the name.
Oh, whoops.
Of Dead End Ages. Dead End Ages had built up an event of large-scale invasion of aliens, and you need to prepare for it. There will be a lot of casualties. There will be a lot of generals, all the magical girls, and all the aliens you can think of. Anyway, after the fight, now it's time to rebuild. Oh, what the fuck happened? Why did you skip that?
It just got completely
You cannot
glazed
build
over.
something up and then skip it. So the off-screen characters that are constantly skipped, in which way you feel like, okay, you're literally having a throwaway characters and or plot points, I tend not to like. Okay, but the dramatic build-ups for some reveals later, or someone who is deeper than the main protagonist realize, but you as the reader slowly get a better understanding, such as would be the darkness in Amatsutsumi. Those are phenomenal if done right.
But if you ask me, I'd have to say, no, I honestly don't really like having off-screen characters, because too many times, my first thought is just, oh, this is a cheap cost-saving measure. Just like how you said, like with Nekopara or stuff. It's like, hey, let's go visit Grandma. Oh, okay, we're back. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I wonder why we didn't do that. I understand that it can be good for mystery titles. I can be good as a stylistic aspect, but I think those are just up to the writer being quite skilled in the first place. And so that's just a matter of the writing being good, and I don't need to doubt their skills. Like I said, I don't like the idea. I don't like this trope of off-screen characters first. Well, that's just me, though.
I mean, that's very fair. Very fair. I gave you plenty examples in which I've been disappointed or led by the nose to nothing. So I definitely understand that.
But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed listening in today's episode. I always love how visual novels just cover so much material, in that you can cover a lot of different aspects, a lot of different angles about how a visual novel presents itself. Just something as simple as off-screen characters can have a lot of depth to it. I always like that.
True. Yeah, there's plenty of ways to implement such concept, right? As we demonstrated with different types today. Okay, on that note, thanks to all our listeners, and please tell us in the comments whether or not you were listening on the other monitor off screen to this podcast. And with that, VNture out.
VNture out.